Congressman Hank Johnson, thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
I want to start off with this. Today we learned that a federal funding freeze was rescinded about a day after it was set to go into effect. We've heard that there was an emergency meeting being called by House Democrats to discuss, at that point, a three-pronged approach to kind of tackle this federal fund now, or federal freeze rather, now that it has been rescinded. What is the thoughts, the talk amongst Democrats right now in the House about moving forward here?
Well, Trump is calling it a rescission, but when you actually read the so-called rescission, it is not a rescission. And so the cuts, the theft of taxpayer money continues. So you can't get, you got to look at what they do and not what they say, even in terms of the actions as opposed to what they write. So the rescissions are still in effect, although the court in Washington, D.C. has enjoined the enforcement of it, and there will be arguments next week in federal court in Washington, D.C. To determine whether or not the court embargo on the spending freeze will continue, or whether or not it'll be lifted and then the spending freeze goes into effect. So that's where we are now. The threat is still there.
So it was reported today that there was a memo sent out from the administration saying that the directive to freeze federal funding was rescinded. You don't believe that notice at all?
There's been a clarification that's been issued also. So what's happening is the waters are being muddied because what really happened was there was an uproar by the people, and Trump felt the heat. And so along with the victory in the courtroom yesterday, he wanted to save face. So he issues this, what I'll call a fake rescission memo with a clarification. But the bottom line net result is that the spending freeze on grants and loans is still in effect. It's been enjoined by the courts, but that will be determined whether or not it will continue next week.
So let me ask you this. What came out of that meeting today? I know that Mr. Jeffries had called this meeting saying that you all were going to talk about a three-pronged approach. I believe that it was supposed to include some type of legal action. What was discussed? What can Americans see come out of this from House Democrats?
Well, of course, Democrats are not in control of the House of Representatives. Republicans have that responsibility. They have the majority. And so we can defend, but we can't prosecute. They control the floor. They put measures on the floor for House consideration and a vote. Democrats are more in a defensive position. We can work with our outside stakeholders who are the ones who have the standing to take these matters to court. Congress would not have standing on this impoundment issue that we are dealing with today. In other words, the executive branch refusing to spend money that's been authorized and appropriated by the legislative branch. The executive branch refusing its obligation under the Constitution, Article 2, Section 3, to take care that the laws passed by Congress are faithfully executed. So what the executive branch has done the Trump has decided that I don't like what Congress has passed. I don't like the law. I don't want spending for child care for families. I don't want to fund breakfast and lunch meals for children. I don't want to fund Meals on Wheels for seniors. I don't want to fund COPS grants for local fire departments, local police departments. So all of these things that the freeze applies to are things that President Trump has decided that he doesn't want on his agenda. His problem is that Congress, under Article 1 of the Constitution, is the entity that sets the policy. He merely implements that policy, and so he's violating the Constitution. It's been challenged in court. That was one of the things that we talked about today, is that court challenge. And the other thing we talked about is the need for people to be informed about what is actually happening, how this administration is trying to deconstruct our democracy so that they can steal taxpayer money to fund their massive tax giveaway to Trump and his billionaire buddies. That's what this is all about. They prefer to have a federal government that is so small that you can drown it in a bathtub. That's the type of federal government that can't fund programs that make life more affordable for the American people.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that there is still a threat of federal funding being frozen. People
Yes.
who are used to getting checks and services and assistance from the federal government. In your point of view, in what you're hearing in Washington, is that this is still very much a threat. I understand. Go ahead.
No question about it. Russell Vogt is the president's nominee to serve as the chairman of the Office of Budget, of the Office of Budget for the federal government. And once he is confirmed, he's going to implement what he's already started. And it's important for the public to know that this guy, who has been appointed and awaits confirmation as director of the Office of Management and Budget, is the author of the notorious Project 2025 memo. He's one of the prime authors of that doctrine, which, when you go and take a look at it, tells you exactly what they are doing. That's what was published back in 2023 that they would do as soon as they re-elected Donald Trump. So he's the man who wrote the framework, the game plan to do what is happening now, which is the deconstruction of, they call it the administrative state, deconstruction of the administrative state. He's the author of how to do that. And now he awaits confirmation to the office that would enable him to have his hands on the pocketbook, opening and closing, at doing whatever he wants to do. And so one of the things we talked about today is for the people of America to understand what's happening and to be prepared to take swift, public, nonviolent protest action to protect this democracy that has been an experiment for the last 250 years.
So House Democrats are calling on the American people to do peaceful protest against the actions that's being taken right now.
Well, we're preparing the American people for what may become necessary. And certainly peaceful protest in the street helps the cause, for the people to be awake, active, woke, as they say. Nothing wrong with being woke. In fact, if you're sleeping, you're in bad shape. They're counting on the American people to be asleep, not woke. And so when you're woke, you are able to address the harms that people are directing your way, and you're able to defeat that. And that's what we must do. We must protect our democracy.
Can I ask you this? I know that the House Democrats are the minority right now in the House, but...
And the Senate also.
Yes.
And the presidency.
And the presidency.
And the courts.
That's right. The Republicans have taken over. It's been a red wave in Washington as well as here in the state of Georgia. My question is for you, Congressman Johnson. Is there a way that Democrats can come across the aisle if there is a federal freeze on funding that is as you say, harming the American people, I imagine that's going to harm the American people on the Democratic side as well as the Republican side if you're talking about different programs that receive this funding. Do you see any Republican lawmakers that would see eye to eye on you all to go against what the president and his potential pick to be over the budget wants to do?
No, I do not see Republicans having the courage to do the right thing. They are all concerned about the massive amount of money that would be used to defeat them in their primaries if they go against Donald Trump and his co-president, Elon Musk.
So there's a fear.
Who has threatened, directly threatened these representatives and senators that if you're not with the Trump program, I'm going to primary you. Now, this is the same guy that put at least $250 million into the campaign to elect Donald Trump. I'm sure that he put much more, and he certainly can afford to do so. That's just $250 million to him is like a dime in the pocket of a working person. This man, his net worth increased almost 60% between November 5th and today. I mean, the guy was worth $250 billion back then. Now he's worth $465 billion.
So there's a fear amongst Republicans that if they don't fall in line with Elon Musk or Trump, that they're going to be gone. So they're going to. You believe they're going to fall in line.
It's either, and it's not just Elon Musk's money. It's the podcasters and the AM radio and Fox televisions, Fox News going against you. You can't survive that. And so, you know, there are no Republicans who are willing to stand up to that kind of pressure and vote on behalf of the citizens that they represent, as opposed to voting to maintain their privilege, their honorable titles, and their little bit of money that they get as senators and members of the House. I'd point out probably in excess of 50% of those Republicans are millionaires, the ones who are serving in Congress right now. So they are there to protect that class. And it's the Democrats who are out to protect the incomes, the ability to make it in America financially for working people and for people who are looking to pull themselves up into the middle class. That's Democrats who work for those folks. Republicans are working for the millionaires and now the billionaires. That's why you had the three most wealthiest people in the world front and center at Trump's inauguration, and one of them, Elon Musk, throwing up the Heil Hitler salute not once, not twice, but 3 times. It tells you where they're thinking, what Make America Great Again actually means.
Now, he did say that he wasn't throwing up Hitler salute, and I do want to say that there were some citizens, working class citizens, a lot of them that did vote for President Trump, which is where we are right now. I want to ask you this, though, about the Democrats. As you say, they're working for the working class people. On the topic of immigration, specifically the Lake and Riley Act that was just signed into law, we know that 46 of your colleagues in the House did vote in favor of that. One of your colleagues, Lucy McBath, here in Florida, voting in favor for that.
In Georgia.
Or excuse me, in Georgia, correct. You voted no on that. What did Lucy McBath and then your colleagues over in the Senate, Senator Warnock, Senator Ossoff, what did they get wrong? Because they all voted yes for this.
Well, I was a criminal defense lawyer for 27 years before coming to Congress. And I was also a magistrate court judge during that time for 12 years. And so I know criminal law. I know what probable cause is. I know what the lack of probable cause is. And so the Lake and Riley Act provides for the federal government, the Department of Homeland Security. It requires them to take into custody and detain an immigrant who is simply accused of shoplifting, or who might admit that I committed an act of family violence in hitting my male spouse back who hit me. Self-defense, but family violence, those kinds of catch-all provisions that require the Department of Homeland Security to actually pick up and detain a person. If a sheriff's deputy says that, okay, this guy told me, he confessed that he did this, that, or the other in terms of, he stole a peanut butter and jelly sandwich from the corner store. We're going to detain him and deport him without any probable cause, without any adjudication of guilt. And I think that that is wrong. And so what it is a...
but why do you think the other Democrats thought that this was the right way?
Well, they may see it a little differently. My view is my view. It was shared by most Democrats and no Republican. But I give folks credit for having their own views on things. This is my view. This is why I voted against it. And others have to do what they have to do. So I'm not concerned about them. I'm just concerned about how I vote.
Well, let me ask you about this. You did vote that way. This is the law that we have now. On the topic of immigration, we know that you have been vocal against the things that's been happening, specifically the raids. I know you talked about a lot of...
Against terrorism.
Well...
And terroristic threats and terroristic activities. And terrorizing young children and families. I oppose that.
And we know that the ICE raids have impacted migrants, they've impacted refugees, folks in your district as well. Have you gotten a sense of how many arrests have been made since this executive order has come down?
No, but I think the quota that they have nationwide is like 1,877 or something like that per day that they want to go out and sweep up. Now, these are people that they say are charged with violent crimes. But no, they're not limiting their sweeps to people who are accused of crime. They're swooping in people who are undocumented, whether or not they have been accused of committing criminal activity or not, because they consider being undocumented to be a criminal act. And so based on their interpretation, they're sweeping up everybody. And that's how they're able to get their numbers. But the reason why they're doing that is to pay off their friends, the billionaires again, who own the private for-profit detention centers that have sprung up and will continue to be springing up. Federal government pays for about 40,000 beds at this point, whether or not they are filled or not, putting taxpayer monies into the hands of, into the pockets of the billionaires who control these for-profit detention centers, privately owned. Now they want to go up to 110,000 beds. And so, this is a massive shift of taxpayer money into the hands of the billionaires. And so they have all kinds of schemes, knowing that the people that they are detaining, and they detain them and not immediately deport them, but they detain them, hold them for 6, 7, 8 months, and then deport them, just to kind of keep those the profits for the private for-profit detention center facilities, keep those profits rolling in. But they know that those people are the ones that put the food that we eat on our tables.
And I was going to ask you about that.
So that means with the workforce shrinking, prices go up.
And how does that impact the agriculture industry here in Georgia? As we know, it's one of, if not the top producer for Georgians, and there are likely several undocumented workers that help to supply.
Yeah, 40% of the farm workers are undocumented. And so when you take them out of the mix, how are you going to get your crops in? How are you going to get them planted? And how are you going to get them harvested? And so shortage means supply and demand. Demand is great, supply is small, prices go up. That's why, that goes against your stated objective when you won election to lower prices, to make it more affordable for people to live. You're doing everything you can to undermine that objective with your plan to terrorize and detain and deport the very people that enable Americans to eat. They're the ones who work at the chicken processing plants. If you like chicken, you're going to be paying a lot more for it. Fish, meat packing plants.
So you think that the immigration policies are going to drive up pricing? I also know that you sent out a statement saying that your office is doing everything that they can to work with different organizations so that people know their rights as all of this is playing out. Can you all do anything else besides informing the public? Are there any policies, any legal action, anything in the works right now when it comes to combating what you feel like are harmful policies from the Trump administration?
We've got to make sure that people are awake, woke, and understand what is happening. We got to make sure that at a certain point of time, if it should become necessary, they should be ready to take their nonviolent protest out of the House and into the streets in mass protests, because that says something. It already, we know how that can change things, and so we may need that to happen. We can use the legal route, go to court, although we recognize that there's a 6-3 extremist supermajority, right-wing Trump supermajority on the Supreme Court that's likely to do what Trump wants them to do, but even they can be influenced by public outrage. They understand, they want to, they want longevity in terms of being in office, lifetime tenure is what they have now. I have legislation that would reduce that to 18-year terms so that we don't end up with the same kind of endemic corruption that exists now on the Supreme Court, which has resulted in the court being captured by billionaire interests.
But legal action is on the table. Anything
Yes.
specific right now coming out? Did you guys discuss that today, perhaps?
Well, no, we talk more from a policy and political aspect today.
Okay.
There are so many things that are happening. We just can't afford to get bogged down on each and every issue. We've got to highlight the ones that hurt the American people the most.
And which ones are that right now?
Well, I mean, that's in terms of your cost. I mean, when you start applying tariffs to the goods that people get, and those goods are coming from overseas, that's going to increase prices. The president has threatened to do that. That's part of his promise to the American people, is I'm going to put tariffs on goods coming from foreign countries. That's going to result in higher prices. When you start deporting the workforce, that's going to result in higher prices. When you start defunding government, then you're taking money out of the pockets of small businesses that employ millions of Americans. So you're causing unemployment. You're causing inflation to actually go up. You're undermining the economy when you withdraw federal spending from the economy. It contracts the economy. The economy then loses jobs.
So cost is top
Yeah,
of mind right now.
so the ability of the American people to afford to live in America is being threatened by these policies, by these mindless policies. The only thing the policymakers in control now want to do is shift more of the wealth into the hands of the billionaire class. They've been doing it for decades. Joe Biden, when he came along, and Kamala Harris shifted that. But now we're back into this trickle-down economics mode again.
And that is what the American people voted for. So that's where we're here.
Because they were influenced on social media that is owned by these same billionaires, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Google, Apple, the owners of the platforms, the internet service providing community, the billionaires. They're the ones that control the algorithms that dictate the information that the people receive. And when that information is not truthful, when it's deceptive, when it's out lies, then people end up voting against their economic interest. And so that's what happened. That's why it's so important that people return their gaze away from their handheld devices and internet entertainment, and turn it back to trusted sources of information like network news, even though unfortunately our networks are now and our publications like the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, are now responding to the pressure that they're getting from the oligarch owners to moderate their content so that it does not offend Donald Trump. And the next move is to actually start publishing lies and deception. We want to keep that from happening. It's already happening online and digitally. But these kinds of shows, like the one that you are hosting now, are the ones where people can actually get truthful and accurate information. And I know some folk are going to say, well, he's just a Democrat, but I'm telling you the truth as I see it. And if you've got a Republican who has a different truth, I'd like to hear it. And
we certainly invite Republicans, Democrats, and everybody in between, and we stick to the true values of journalism on this show. Just a couple more questions for you. I know we can't keep you too much longer. So much I could talk to you for hours about this, but I do want to ask you about the implications of the changes within DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We did see an executive order signaling to start the closure of federal departments that implement DEI. What action are you doing today to protect against progress that you say Trump is dismantling?
Yeah, so Make America Great Again actually meant Make America White Again. That's why first thing out of the gate is abolishing, rescinding executive orders and that banned discrimination by the federal government in hiring and in contracting. Even a 60-year-old executive order issued by President Lyndon Baines Johnson back in '65, banning discrimination in federal hiring, rescinded. The reason why you're doing that, the reason is related to the guy giving the Heil Hitler salute in your inauguration. All of that needs to come together. You want to whitewash history. That's why you banned the Air Force from talking about the Tuskegee Airmen. That's why you are not going to recognize Black History Month in February. No federal agency can talk about it. That's why you have banned diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives of the federal government to make right the wrong that has been done for most of this nation's history, for 180 years, 190 years of our 250-year history. We've been under the gun as a people, black people, either in slavery or through Jim Crow racism.
And in your time in office, I mean, you've been in Washington for a very long time. I'm sure you've seen those changes. But what will you all do? What can your office do? What can House Democrats do to protect what you feel is a dismantling with these executive orders?
Well, we cannot give up on the system, and the system has an opportunity to work again with free and fair elections in 2026. And so when we retake control of the House of Representatives and retake control of the Senate in 2026, we can change the direction of the country. And the American people by then will perhaps have undergone such pain so as to have awakened to the fact that they gave a man, a billionaire, who promised to make things better for them, their vote. And he, in turn, engaged in the great betrayal. He betrayed those people by taking away their rights, making it less affordable to live in this country, raising prices, and gave his billionaire buddies billions in tax cuts and direct public money. He's made the he will have made the billionaires more wealthy at the expense of the people who voted for him. And so 26, 28, hopefully people will see that and bring about a new day, and we can once again begin to bolster, protect, and make better this system of governance and this economic system so that it works for everyone.
And 2026 is within striking distance. So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, are Democrats' hands kind of tied until 2026 when it comes to combating or defending against anything that you all feel you don't like seeing happening right now?
No,
because Republicans do have control of all three branches. Right?
Yeah, we can continue to use our bully pulpit. We can continue to work with the outside groups, and we can continue to educate the American people and keep them informed as to what is going on.
So now it's building, it's educating, it's looking ahead to 2026. So you're hopeful that in 2026, Democrats can flip some seats, retake some the House or potentially even the Senate.
I mean, you've got to keep in mind that Donald Trump only won by about 1%. He won about 3 million more votes nationwide than Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. So he did not get a mandate. The American people are evenly divided. It could tilt either way. And so we have to keep working towards achieving the goal of being in power so that we can ensure that the American people are the ones that we work for, not the billionaires.
Yeah, he definitely, it's very divided, we would see. He did take all the swing states, which surprised some people, not all, but it was certainly a red wave that we saw last year. I know Democrats are working hard to reframe the positioning and educate people. I want to ask you something about the state here. I know that there had been calls for a change in state leadership on the Democratic Party. Some people calling for Congresswoman Nikema Williams to step down, make room for a different era of leadership. Do you agree with that?
Well, you know, I'm a member of the Democratic Party, and I'm an elected representative. And I look out for the people of Georgia through that organization, as well as through my efforts as a policymaker, politics and policy. You know, we have a lot of work to do in Georgia to turn Georgia blue every time. You know, this time, I mean, Donald Trump won this election by 110,000 votes in Georgia. In 2020, he lost by 11,779 votes. So we can do a better job in Georgia.
Do you have faith in her leadership?
Well, you know, she is our leader at this time. And so, you know, I'm moving forward with my support for the party and for the party's candidates. And I think we'll do a better job in the next election cycle than we did in the past one, because we learned from our mistakes. And that's not just the state party, but the national party. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we're going through growing pains. We got our butts kicked in the digital arena. We did a great job on the street. Could have done a better job, but did a great job on the street, but we lost in the digital world. And
that's something that you feel like Democrats need to work on the digital
world?
world?
Yeah, we definitely need to work on.
I just want to ask you this. If Congresswoman Williams decides to step down, you would support that?
Yes.
You would?
Mm-hmm.
And would you see a need for that at all?
Well,
or do you think that she's doing okay right now?
I think she should make that decision. I think she has said that if the board comes back with a recommendation that the chair should become a full-time paid position, mm-hmm. then she would step aside. Mm-hmm. And so that decision-making process is ongoing. Yeah. And you know, I appreciate Representative Williams for the work that she has done. Mm-hmm. I mean, tireless work, thankless work. That's what I mean to say, thankless work. Mm-hmm. Nobody thanks you when you're going above and beyond what you're called to do. And so I appreciate her for her thankless work. And the next person, should it be another person soon that comes into that role, they will assume that same thankless task, and people will be expecting results.
Final question for you, because we're running out of time here. Politically, for you, are you focused on your role as a congressman, or would you consider the open seat in 2026 for Georgia governor? Oh, gosh.
I'm elected to represent the people of the 4th District. It's always been my dream to serve in Congress, and I am living my dream. And I have no other aspirations for political office. So, no, I'm not even. It's first time anyone said anything like that to me. I'm astounded that I would be thought of as being someone who would aspire for that office.
Any Democrats you have your eye on that you would support as governor?
There are quite a few. There are quite a few who I would consider. And
former Mayor Keisha Lance Bottom says that she is seriously considering it. Would you support her?
Well, I'm looking at who will actually get into the race, who will actually qualify. Okay. Talk is cheap. I make decisions based on who qualifies, and that we're still a ways off for that to happen.
All right. Well, we'll wait and see. Congressman, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time today. We appreciate your insight, and we look forward to having you again on the program.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's been a joy to be with you.